So now that the Vikings are done with their first 8 games of the season, I want to do a mid-season check-in. So before the season started, I made early projections as far as who would be your 2019 Minnesota Vikings Rookie of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, Offensive Player of the Year, Coach of the Year, Comeback Player of the Year, and I also implemented an NBA-style type of award. So in the NBA, they have what's known as the Sixth Man of the Year, basically a player that comes off the bench and has equal or in some cases more impact than the starters on their own team. So for the sake of the NFL and the Minnesota Vikings, I have what's known as the 12th Man of the Year award, and then we'll end it with MVP. So we'll start with Rookie of the Year, who I projected would be Garrett Bradbury, who I think all things considered has had a pretty okay first half of the season. He started off a little bit rocky, even though I defended him because I didn't think that Garrett Bradbury was all that bad as some folks made him out to be to start the year. Yes, he was a little bit shaky, but he has come on strong as of late. In fact, I defended this whole offensive line from the very beginning, except with the last couple of weeks, Pat Elflein, because I said, listen, the 2019 Vikings offensive line is already head and shoulders better than the 2018 version of the Vikings offensive line. However, I think the more consistent rookie, with that said, has been Alexander Mattison. Whenever his name has been called, he has rung the bell each and every time. So whether it's to come in to give Dalvin Cook a rest, or if the play design just calls for a change of pace running back or goal line stands where we need a bruising running back to just punch it in, Alexander Mattison has been lights out. He is averaging nearly 5 yards a carry. That's starter numbers for a running back right there. And you can make the argument that the Vikings have the top 2 running backs in the entire NFC North division. But Alexander Mattison, I think just for the factor of being more consistent and being an impactful running back. So even though Dalvin Cook has to go off, we can still run the ball effectively. Alexander Mattison has been your 2019 Vikings Rookie of the Year through the first 8 games of the season. We'll move on to 12th Man of the Year award, who I projected to be Mackenzie Alexander, who I think even though he's missed a couple of games when he has come in, he's still been very effective as well. But when you're talking about the biggest impact of a player to come off the bench, whether it's in a rotational role or whether it's to fill in for a starter that is out due to injury or what have you, I think the 12th Man of the Year so far through the first 8 games of the season has been Dakota Dozier. Dakota Dozier has come in. He has started 3 games in place of Josh Klein, who you can make the argument has been the second best offensive lineman for the 2019 Vikings behind Brian O'Neill. And whether Josh Klein has been out or in to where Dakota Dozier has to come in or out, the right side of the offensive line, which is the strong point of the Vikings offensive line, hasn't missed a beat at all, which helps Dalvin Cook and the run game and Kirk Cousins and the passing game and the receiving weapons as well. So I think just because of that, it has had the biggest impact for this team and their ability to win. So Dakota Dozier has been your 12th Man of the Year so far, and he wasn't on my radar at all. But just having that valuable piece to come in and play guard whenever necessary, he has been your 12th Man of the Year up to this point. We'll move on to Defensive Player of the Year, who, yes, I kind of bitched out on this one on the projection because I had it as a 2-way tie between Danielle Hunter and Harrison Smith, and both players have been great. Okay, both players have played extremely well. This isn't a knock on either of the 2 players. However, I think the clear-cut Defensive Player of the Year so far for your 2019 Vikings has been Eric Kendricks. Eric Kendricks is on pace for a personal best 136 tackles this season, which, yes, it's amazing, it's fantastic, but for me personally, it doesn't necessarily knock your socks off when you look at the bigger picture. Forget the fact that Eric Kendricks can do everything that you want to see from a traditional linebacker. He's great against the run. He's a surefire tackler, obviously, but once in a while, he can also bring on pressure to the quarterback. However, the bigger impact that he has had, Eric Kendricks, on this defense has been his play in pass coverage. Coming into this season, Eric Kendricks had a previous season high of 9 pass deflections. You compare that to the first 8 games of this season, he already has surpassed that with 10 pass deflections. He is on pace to more than double his previous season high. His impact in pass coverage has made all the difference in the world for this defense and for this team as a whole. Think about this. When you talk about a secondary unit for any team in the NFL, you think about cornerbacks and safeties, rightfully so. However, when it comes to the Minnesota Vikings and you talk about their secondary, Eric Kendricks has been so great in pass coverage that you have to consider him as part of the secondary as well. Eric Kendricks is having the best season for a Vikings linebacker in the 20 years that I have been following this team. He has been that damn great. And now we move on to Offensive Player of the Year, in which I projected it to be Kirk Cousins. And we'll give honorable mentions out certainly to Dalvin Cook for obvious reasons, but also to Brian O'Neill, who's been one of the best players on offense for the 2019 Vikings team as a whole, has been one of the best right tackles in the league, and finally gave up his first career sack after a year and a half in the 8th game of the season this year, last Thursday night against the Washington Redskins. So certainly kudos to both of those players, but I think Kirk Cousins has been your Offensive Player of the Year. Certainly he's playing some of the best football in his career. The last 4 games, you can make the argument that he's been one of the best quarterbacks in the entire NFL. And so the last 4 games, he's been completing 78% of his passes, 10 touchdowns, 1 interception, which wasn't his fault. Very excellent on the deep ball. And he's been exercising a higher football IQ. And the thing that was so frustrating about the first 4 weeks of the season is what you're seeing right now, the last 4 weeks, is everything that we've known this offense is capable of. But Kirk Cousins has been your Offensive Player of the Year. Now we move on to Coach of the Year. Coming into this season, I thought that Gary Kubiak would be Coach of the Year. And if you still want to say that, that's fine. I'm not even going to argue against it. But for me, it's been Kevin Stefanski. And yes, this offense has Kubiak's fingerprints all over it, but Kevin Stefanski has been the guy on the sidelines calling the plays. Kevin Stefanski has done a great, masterful job of being unpredictable, of being aggressive, using a balanced offensive attack. But here's the thing that I would advise all Vikings fans to brace themselves for, is that after this season, Kevin Stefanski will be gone. He will be a head coach somewhere else unless the Vikings decide to fire Mike Zimmer in favor of Kevin Stefanski, which I don't see them doing that. He is going to be gone. And so the thing is that has me uneasy, at least initially, about it, is that I would like to see some consistency on offense. So if every year we're rotating offensive coordinators left and right, a new scheme every single year, that's going to hurt our overall productivity for the Minnesota Vikings as a whole. And so with that said, Kevin Stefanski, he's going to be gone. You have to assume that he's going to be gone because the only reason that he's still here with this team in 2019 is because the Cleveland Browns selected Freddie Kitchens over him for the head coaching spot. Otherwise, he would be head coach of the Cleveland Browns right now. So he is going to be gone. However, I do have a solution. There is some level of optimism if you're a Minnesota Vikings fan. The New York Football Giants, ladies and gentlemen, they just lost last Sunday to the Detroit Lions. Final score 31-26. They are now 2-6 on the season. There is a mass calling for the firing of Pat Shurmur of head coach. So if that were to happen, let's say they go 2-14 the rest of the year, they never win another game again. Even so, let's say they go 3-13, 4-12, whatever. And if Pat Shurmur gets fired, come on home, baby. Come on back to the Minnesota Vikings, because now you're talking about Pat Shurmur in his second stint as a head coach, formerly of the Cleveland Browns. And at this point in time, you have to think that, okay, your time is up. You're only good as an offensive coordinator. You're never going to be a head coach again. And if that is the case, then Pat Shurmur, come on home, baby. The Vikings should be all in on bringing Pat Shurmur back. And then that way you can guarantee yourself a consistent offensive coordinator for years to come. And there's no knock on Pat Shurmur if you don't work out as a head coach, because some guys are just better off working behind the scenes or letting another player not another player, letting another face be the head coach, and in the words of Suge Knight, be all up in the videos to where you can work behind the scenes and just focus on the one facet of the team. So in this case, it would be on offense. So if that were to happen, the Vikings have an opportunity to bring Pat Shurmur back, and boy, would I be happy. Woo! Now we move on to comeback player of the year. And so I projected it to be Pat Elflein because he had a down year in 2018. I said, nah, he'll be fine. He'll be fine. He will be your comeback player of the year. Boy, did that go to hell. And so with that said, we have some honorable mentions for comeback player of the year: Anthony Barr, Everson Griffin, Eric Kendricks, and Kirk Cousins. But for me, it's Dalvin Cook. You want to talk about comeback player of the year? 2017, his rookie year, he missed the final 12 games of the season after tearing his ACL in the fourth game of the season against the Detroit Lions. And then in 2018, he missed 5 games overall, really operated under a pitch count, was getting back up to speed, was still dinged up, suffered some injuries here or there, but now he's fully healthy. He's played every single game, and he is on pace to either lead the league in rushing or, if not, worst case, be second in rushing. That is your comeback player of the year, and it's not even close. Now we get to MVP, your 2019 Minnesota Vikings most valuable player of the year so far through the first 8 games of the season. We'll keep it going. It's Dalvin Cook. And I know that Kirk Cousins, he's been mentioned, Kirk Cousins, he's been your MVP. And I've heard that, maybe he could be MVP of the league. Nah, man, not at all. It's all about consistency. And for me, it's Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook has been the constant engine on this offense. So far, out of 8 games, he has 5 games with at least 100 yards rushing. Would have been 6 last week, except he finished 2 yards shy with 98 yards rushing against the Washington Redskins. He keeps the defense honest, and he makes everyone else's job around him on the Vikings organization much, much easier. So, for instance, Kirk Cousins, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league at play action. Well, guess what? Because of Dalvin Cook being on the field, you can sell the play action more with him, which makes Kirk Cousins' job a lot easier. For the defense, our Vikings defense, they get a chance to catch their breath. You know why? Because Dalvin Cook chews up clock. The Minnesota Vikings are top half in the league. They're damn near top third in the league in terms of average time of possession. So while our defense is catching their breath on the sidelines, in return, he's wearing out the opposing defense on the field that we're facing. Dalvin Cook is the MVP of this damn team, and it's not even close. He's been more consistent than Kirk Cousins, and that's why I said earlier in the offseason that Dalvin Cook is going to be the DeMarco Murray. I think this was back in 2014. You remember when DeMarco Murray kicked ass on the Dallas Cowboys, but Tony Romo took all the credit? I swear, DeMarco Murray was the MVP for the Dallas Cowboys. It's the same situation right now. Dalvin Cook is the most valuable player of the Minnesota Vikings, and it's not even close for me. And so we'll run through the list again. Rookie of the year, instead of Garrett Bradbury, it has been Alexander Madison. 12th man of the year, instead of Mackenzie Alexander, it has been Dakota Dozier. Defensive player of the year, instead of Danielle Hunter / Harrison Smith, it has been Eric Kendricks. Offensive player of the year, it's constant with what I said. It is Kirk Cousins. Coach of the year, instead of Gary Kubiak, it is Kevin Stefanski. Comeback player of the year, instead of Pat Elflein, is Dalvin Cook. And MVP, I'm sticking with it. It is Dalvin Cook. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comment section of this video. We do this 3 times a week. Mediocre at Best Sports Podcast with Realistic Randy. Check me out on Twitter at realistic_Randy, Facebook at Realistic Randy. We will see you tomorrow. Not predicting. Well, I guess we can predict it too. We will see you tomorrow previewing the Kansas City versus Minnesota Vikings game this upcoming Sunday, Week 9. We'll see you tomorrow.